Namaskar, good evening. Welcome to another edition of ECG Meetup by Asifa India. I'm your host for tonight. My name is Sanjay Kumusta, and we are here to present you with the next edition of ECG Meetup. Today, we have a super exciting lineup with us. We are going to present ECG Meetup with making of Deepa and Anoop. uh, I'll first give you the flow of session. We'll start with the introduction of Asifa India. We'll then go to introduce the core committee. Then we'll talk about Asifa activities and how you can engage with Asifa. We'll introduce the speakers of the today. We'll go into the session. Then we'll have Q&A. And we'll end with the Thanksgiving. Asifa India promotes the opportunities for artists in animation all around the world. Asifa International has presence in more than 70 countries with chapters in 42 plus countries. Asifa India team is led by Vani Saraswati Balgam, and she is president of Asifa in India. She is also the creator, writer, and director for Dancing Atom, which is a boutique preschool and animation feature film creative development studio based at Los Angeles. She's also on various community building activities in representing the women and animation across the world. Then we have Sesha Prasad AR. Sesha Prasad is one of the core committee member, and he is head of production at DNEX India. DNEG is one of the world's largest visual effects studio for feature and television. They have 7 Academy Awards with them. My name is Sanjay Kumusta, and I'm uh, president of a design school in Indore, based in central India. And I've been in this industry for 25 years. Siva Kumar Kassetti, he is one of the core committee member. He is producer at Monk Studios, Bangkok. He's also associated with Destiny Logic and KVD Academy as a mentor and consultant. Uh, then we have RK Polina. RK is a core committee member and founder of ISCG Multimedia. Then we have Ramakrishna Vinod, Krishnan Vinod. He is core committee member and in charge of payroll and accounts at Tau Films and Circus Arts Private Limited. Our president emeritus is Bill Dennis. Asifa India activities primarily are focused on knowledge sharing through master classes, workshops, CG meetups, which we keep organizing throughout. Awards of Excellence is one of the flagship activity which we do along with International Animation Day. And this year we felicitated various professionals and students across the country for their outstanding contribution. We have already announced for call for entries for new session of Awards of Excellence, and last date for submission of films is 30th of September. We've already released the poster for International Animation Day 2022, and we plan to organize it across 12 cities as sub-chapters in India. We are super excited to keep interacting with you through various International Animation Day and other monthly activities near to you. Uh, we have Before last year we started with the Women Creators Program, and first batch graduated in 2021. Second batch graduated recently, and its short films are uploaded on Vimeo. Uh, our backbone is evangelists who are working at different locations across India, and they are the key support providers. You can stay in touch through our website asifaindia.com or uh, connect to Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Now I'll introduce the experts who are there with us. I'm super excited to have Christopher Keenan. He's Senior Vice President, Creative and Executive Producer at Metal Television. Christopher Keenan is highly accomplished creative executive. He's executive producer and writer who enjoyed over 35 years of success in animation, kids and family entertainment industries, and worked on productions that have won several awards including Emmy, NACAP, Peabody, Parents' Choice, and BAFTA awards. With thousands of hours of production to his credit, he is equally adept at development, production, sales. Uh, we are delighted to welcome you, Mr. Christopher Keenan. Then we have Lisa Goldman. Lisa is writer, director, producer, and educator. Lisa's motto is never give up. After a wonderful life-altering trip to India and 17 years of perseverance, Lisa and her team of Heather, Kenyon, and Munjal worked for development deal with Metal Television that landed preschool animated series Deepa Anoop, which is now on Netflix. Uh, Brought to India by animation guru Ramohan, Lisa served on international jury of the Mumbai International Film Festival and taught a workshop at Ramohan's Design and Animation School. She is dedicated to New York uh, NYC Animation Industry Council, and she has been appointed as an advisor uh, for the animation project TAP. She is a past president of Women in Animation and continues to mentor and network creators of our industry. We are super excited to welcome Lisa Goldman. Then we have Heather Kenyon. Heather started her career at Hanna-Barbera Cartoons and also dabbled in journalism as editor-in-chief of Animation World Network. From there, she returned to content creation, joined Cartoon Network, where she ultimately became senior director of development, original series, and led the development department for all animated and live action series for children of 6 to 11 age group. After a year of working in China and Brazil, she went to Stars Animation Toronto and became producer of films such as Focus Features 9, Elton John's Nemo and Juliet as the Vice President, Project Development and Sales. From here, Heather moved to Citizen Skull, working on live action features, and documentaries, and unscripted content, as well as launching the children's media division, Citizen Kids. Kenan graduated magna cum laude with a BFA from Filmic Writing Program at the University of Southern California School of Cinema Television. We are elated to welcome Heather Kenan to today's ECG meetup. Then we have Munjal Shroff. He is writer, animation producer, and director. He has a 27 years of experience in the spectrum of animation, visual effects, and gaming. He is co-founder of Graffiti Multimedia, which started in 1995, and he has forged partnership with Netflix, Walt Disney TV, Cartoon Network, and Nickelodeon. He has developed and produced India's first kids live action with 3D animation TV show Jai Bole To Jadoo with Nickelodeon. He brought Indian folk art and folk series to the children through his hit children movie series called Krish Trish and Bartley Bai, which is on Cartoon Network and Gubbare. He has been honored with Toon Titan of Asia by Animation Magazine USA. Uh, Munjal also serves as co-chairman of FICCI AVGC Forum, as well as he is on advisory board of Media and Entertainment Skills Council. It is a pleasure to welcome Munjal Shroff. Now I hand over the further communication to our President Vani Saraswati. She will take interaction forward with our experts, and then we will have a question and answer session. During the question and answer sessions, if you have any query, you can always put your questions on the Q&A part. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everyone. This is so exciting. Deepa and Anoop. Oh my God, the brilliant, vibrant team here. Look at those smiles. This is so exciting. Thank you so much for coming on board and sharing your experiences and your journey with all of us at Asifa India. So I'm going to say, Lisa, it's been ages that, I remember meeting you when you came to India many, many years ago. So tell us a little bit about how the idea process kind of started and where it started from.
Okay, well, it started in New York when I was heading up Women in Animation in New York City. And a very wonderful person named Kartik Mohan showed up at one of the meetings and we became very good friends. And Kartik said, I want you to meet my parents. Little did I know that his father, Ram Mohan, was like the Walt Disney of India. And when I met Ram, he was like, Lisa, we just started an animation school at Graffiti Multimedia. And he said, I want you to come and do a workshop on how to create animated series and how to write for animated series. And he said, just talk to us. And so I said, great. But he's like, I have to figure this out, how to get you there. And then, so Ram submitted my name to become a judge for the Mumbai International Film Festival. And he's like, you'll have so much fun. He said, I did it last year. You'll have 9 days there. Then you'll come and do the workshop for us. And I was like, great. Because me being from Nutley, New Jersey, this was like the biggest trip of my life. And I was so excited. And when I was doing the film festival, I was a judge there. And every morning we'd get the Times of India delivered to our room. And because I am such a big Goofy fan, like, of course, I just found that column 3, that column on page 3 of the Times of India, which is all about like Bollywood stars. And every morning I couldn't wait to get to that. And like, it was to the point of like, whose grandma was having lunch with another Bollywood star's grandma and at what restaurant. And all I kept thinking like was, if you were the little kid in one of these first families of Bollywood, like your whole life would be like a Bollywood movie. And so, and at the time, Deepa Anoop was called Dimple. So that's how the first inspirations of Dimple and later Deepa Anoop came about. And when I finally got to do the workshop, that's where I met Munjal and had breakfast with him and his partner Tilak. And they were like, let's create a show together. And he's like, you come up with it, you do, and do the words and we'll do the pictures. And so that's just how it all happened.
That is so inspiring. You coming to India, being a judge, and then, kind of working hand in hand with Munjal. That's just brilliant. So did you, from the beginning, have the idea of like a bed and breakfast written in, or did that evolve as time went?
Originally, it started that her grandparents were the biggest stars in Bollywood and they ran the Bollywood Arts Center. So the whole family ran the Bollywood Arts Center. So that was which was kind of like a boutique hotel in a way. So
Perfect.
Yeah. And then
so when did you, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say then that happened. It morphed into the Mango Manor when we had our development deal with Christopher. And
Excellent, excellent.
yeah.
So going to Munjal, just kind of going chronologically. So tell us, like, what has been the experience? When did you meet Lisa? Which year was that?
Yeah, I think that was 2006, if I'm not mistaken, And I think it was just great. I mean, Lisa is so full of energy and always alive and bubbly. So, she was just a fun person to get along. And I think we just got along instantly. And I mean, Lisa has this personality that you will simply fall in love with. And I said, and for me, I think when we collaborate with people, it's very important for me to like the people and hang out, and they should be fun to hang out with. For me, that's like the most important thing, that if you can hang out as friends and have fun, then you will have fun working. So that's been one of my mantras, that whoever I collaborate with, is that a person who can go out and have, hang out, have fun with, have a fun night, have a couple of drinks, party. That's my first criteria. If that works, then we move on to the next part of it. So can I have fun with this person? And Lisa definitely ticked all those boxes. So and it was kind of interesting to see Lisa's reaction to Bollywood. She was like a kid in a candy store. It's like, oh wow, this is so good. And I was like, oh, it's interesting, that she finds Bollywood so exciting, and then that's when we started discussing about the idea that, okay, what should it be? And obviously Bollywood was kind of getting its prominence. And so why not Bollywood? In fact, we had just finished the show with Nickelodeon. It was Nick's first production in Asia, co-production in Asia. If you might remember the movie called Koi Mil Gaya, with Roshan. So we licensed the character of Jadoo from Mr. Rakesh Roshan, and we created a whole animated series, which was a combination of live action and animation. And we had just I think we were just about wrapping up that show. And, we had great fun. We worked with Nick International. I'd been to a couple of MIPs. So started having a taste of what the international market was. And when Lisa came down, I thought, hey, this is a perfect opportunity, why not at least start working on an idea, and we'll see where that leads. So that's how we kind of started out, and like Lisa said, it was originally Dimple. And I think we were very clear that our character needs to, this bright-eyed girl, huge smile with dimples, and we decided to call her Dimple. So that was, yeah.
Excellent, excellent. So Heather, tell us, how did you as the producer come on board? Like, how did that magic happen? I know I've met you a couple of times, but all of you guys are so awesome. But yeah, tell us a little bit about, like, how did you meet Lisa, and then how did the whole thing come together?
So Lisa, I met you, forever ago, I think through Women in Animation, wasn't it? Isn't that how we first got connected? I think it's so funny when you know people for decades, because I'm a total believer in what Munjal said. Like, obviously we're talking about 2014, 2006. You really have to like people to work with them in animation, because it's not an overnight project. But I think I met Lisa through Women in Animation, and also just being a long time ago, I was an executive at Cartoon Network. And so a bunch of people would come and pitch me and meet with me. And so I don't know if I met you through then, Lisa, but I feel like it was more the Women in Animation connection where we originally met. And I think, I could be wrong. And Munjal, I actually met through a woman in the industry called Joanna Ferrone, who's one of the creators of Fido Dido. And so we were talking about that project, and Munjal was the studio, Graffiti was the studio on that project. So that's how I met Munjal, through a friend of a friend. So I'd known Munjal with Fido, and then Lisa, like through Women in Animation, they said, we have this show we want to show you. And the art was absolutely adorable. I think, the energy of Lisa pitching it and being so upbeat and bright and loving the character and knowing everything about the character, that definitely sold it. The fact that there was a color changing elephant, like we'd never seen that before. also just Bollywood. At that time, there was nothing in the marketplace that really celebrated Bollywood or took advantage of this. I mean, I think people in India, of course, Bollywood, it's your movies, right? But for the rest of us, they're really exotic and different. And that just seemed like something that was a really good hook for the rest of the world to make it a global property. And finally, on the last page of the Bible was the most adorable image of, it immediately, it sold it for me. I don't know. It was the same image at the end of the Bible, Christopher, so you'll have to see if it sold you, but it was Deepa riding on Anoop, and she had a parasol and she's looking, it's like it's from behind them, so it's Anoop's butt, and he's walking away and she's on him with a parasol and she's looking over her shoulder, and that was the last picture of the Bible, and I was just like, oh my God, this duo, they're adorable. So I have to work on this. So that, so it was a series, it's never, I don't think it's always one thing. It was a couple different components between just, Lisa's energy and basically being Dimple, Munjal having a studio that we knew, and, I knew him, he'd already been working with people I knew. And just this adorable property that also had this hook of something that the world just hadn't seen before.
That's amazing. Like this whole, and so you met them which years? Because I'm trying to understand, like if she came to India in 2006 and met Munjal, and then if they pitched it to you, which year would that be? Do you know, like
2010 or 11.
Yeah.
That's
unbelievable. And then so Christopher, I'm gonna ask you, how did you end up meeting this wonderful group of people? Like, how did that happen?
Well, very, very specifically, I can tell you when I was first exposed to the property, but let me back up and say, I've known Heather for probably 30 years, and even before her Cartoon Network days, when she was at Hanna-Barbera and I was at Warner Brothers, and we've always clicked and we've always tried to find ways to work together. And back in 2014, I had taken a job with Hit Entertainment in London, and I was going to my first MIPCOM as head of creative for Hit. And I had time set up with Heather, and she introduced me to Lisa, and they shared a couple of different things. And it was, the first market in my new job. And we were, how generally how these international sales markets go, you see a ton of properties, nobody ever commits to anything. You just sort of meet and greet and view. And when they had pitched me a property or two, they weren't right for Hit for a variety of reasons. And I just said very casually to Heather, do you happen to have anything else? And she said, Lisa, show him that Dimple project. And she's like, I know this probably isn't right for you. I know, there was a lot of caveats that, it's very specific. From the moment Lisa started pitching Dimple, I knew this had to be our next project. I just knew it. There were so many aspects to the property and the enthusiasm with which Lisa pitched it that I was not going to leave that market until we had a deal. And we actually made a deal for the property at that market, so that by the time I returned to London, we already had a development deal. And then through Lisa and Heather, I met Munjal. I was working with a really talented executive there, Phil Malloy. And this became our passion project. And this was, I believe it was 2014, and then we closed the deal in 2015, officially. But we toiled over this property for months, tweaking the designs, playing with the story, constantly talking with Munjal and Lisa and Heather about how we could make this really special story as accessible as possible for the rest of the world, and still be 100% reflective of and authentic to the experience of Dimple as a little girl of Indian descent. And so, as Lisa had alluded to earlier, certain things changed. As much as we wanted to embrace Bollywood, and we loved that being at the root of Dimple, we also knew, just as Heather said, that Bollywood was only really known and understood by preschoolers in India. The rest of the world had some exposure to it, but the average 4 or 5-year-old wasn't going to understand, sort of what that was all about. So we looked for ways to infuse the whole property with elements of Bollywood and a Bollywood sensibility, but make it more specific to the experiences of a preschooler. And if you've known any preschoolers or have any yourself, you know that helping is #1 priority, being the little helper. And as soon as we shifted the story into a bed and breakfast where the family had an opportunity to play host to all sorts of characters, we kind of created this world that didn't have diversity and inclusion tacked on, but was all about diversity and inclusion and all about welcoming people of all different walks of life and cultures. And it just played so nicely into this idea that Dimple was the ultimate sort of ambassador of fun and the helper in Mango Manor. Never did we want to walk away from Bollywood, so we ended up including 39 musical numbers in the series, all of which have sort of a Bollywood flair, but are sort of celebratory or explanatory. Each song kind of serves a different purpose. But it's been an incredible journey. Munjal actually did the very first animation test that we used to sell the show. And when we got Netflix on board, literally after one pitch, they fell in love with it. And when they saw the animation, they couldn't have been more excited. So it's been a labor of love since then. The fact that was 2015 and this is now 2022 just really underscores what both Munjal and Heather said, which is you're in this for the long haul, and this better be with people you enjoy, you trust, and you respect. And I can't say enough great things about this team and the production team and the studio we worked with, Kickstart. Yeah. It's just been such an incredible journey, and I have nothing but accolades for everyone involved.
This is amazing. Just listening to the patience, the dedication, the love for a project. It's just uplifting to listen to everyone's stories. And Christopher, like you coming on board with Mattel and Mattel Television, right? Like, and then coming on board and saying, this is going to be a project for the future, and having that vision. What were the risks that maybe someone told you back then? Because I'm saying this is about 7, maybe 8 years ago when these conversations were happening. Am I right?
Yeah, and as Heather pointed out, at that time, there was nothing in the marketplace even close to Dimple, as it was known. So from a creative standpoint, it was a bit of a risk because it didn't fit what was the sort of model for the most successful global preschools. And as HIT was part of the Mattel family of companies at the time, there was definitely a desire to make sure this was not only a sort of entertainment success, but a commercial success, and would be able to be realized, throughout all the different arms of the Mattel collection of companies. And so there were a lot of challenges, both internally and externally, did this have a wide enough appeal? This was a story about a girl of Indian descent. Was that too specific for a global market? Was there enough of a play pattern built into the story of Dimple and Anoop to be able to have that come to life and sort of extend that experience into product and toys? There was all sorts of discussion along the way. But what was really nice about it, about the whole process, is that everyone sort of did a wait and see approach. And it wasn't until we had that animation test that Munjal produced that everyone, internally, externally, fell in love with these two characters. They saw them come to life, and it wasn't just they were cute. They were cute, don't get me wrong, but there was something about their relationship, about their interaction, about the style in which it was animated. It had a very painterly texture, although it was CG, it looked 2D, and it just looked and felt unlike anything that was out there, putting aside its roots in India, just from a purely aesthetic and artistic standpoint. At that point in time, all the most popular shows were very sort of hardened looking CG and kind of looked more like a lot of animated toys. And that wasn't what we were doing. You know, we were telling an incredibly rich story, almost with a dreamlike quality, you know, that when you're a kid and you sort of fantasize, it just had a richness that that I think took everyone by surprise. And so people were willing to sort of buy in little by little. And it didn't hurt that everyone at Netflix fell in love with it. So we had lots of support from one of the biggest platforms in the world.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So Heather, or maybe Munjal or Lisa, one of you, if you could answer, how did you get into like the whole painterly feel? You know, aesthetically, was that by accident, or did you do a lot of trial and errors before you got there?
So when we were developing the look, you know, for the show, and I'll show the.
Yeah, that'll be great if you can like walk us through the animation test to show some design explorations and how it got there, Munjal. That'd be awesome.
So yeah, I'll have to really look for it. I'm not sure if I have it on the laptop right now, but you know, I think one of the things that kind of with CG, it always kind of bothered me was the CG look. And I think as graffiti, one of our fortes has been to kind of, you know, stay away from that and try and create a different look. And whether it's a crayon look that we did, or whether it's a colored pencil look that we did, or a sketchy look. So we wrote a lot of our tools in-house, you know, a lot of the shaders that I wrote, like, because I was basically started out as a Renderman shader programmer. You know, so I have that technology background. So I was very lucky to have two really amazing mentors, right? So I had Ram Mohan on the creative side, and then I had Ashish. I don't know if you ever met Ashish Khosla. He was one of the original founders of Computer. So Ashish, you know, groomed me on the technology side. So I had two really great teachers, right? And when I started under Ram in '97, right, a lot of my education was all 2D animation. So my first love was always 2D. So while 3D is great.
Which school did you come from, Munjal? Did you come from?
I came from the Ram Mohan school. What I know is I learned from Ram Mohan. You know, it was simple. Back then in '97, there was no real formal school, right? The only school was Ram Mohan. If you wanted to learn anything from Ram Mohan, it was the man to go. So I started with him, you know, and I think over the years, we constantly strived on trying to go for different kinds of look, which would be not look like CG. And that was one of our original inspirations, you know. And I can, you know, I think what we did is we used obviously CGI, but then the way we rendered it, the idea was to give it a more watercolor feel. And that's what we worked with. You know, and I think, okay, let me see if I can. All right, this seems to be our lucky day. I do have the test here. Hold on, the teaser. Just give me a minute. I'll share it.
Great. While you prepare, can I ask Heather? Heather, what were the challenges that you faced as a producer when you pitched? I know that you pitched it for, oh, great. We'll just jump to the teaser.
That's great.
Munjal, I just want to say that there are a lot of gray boxes that are popping up.
I am just going to do that. Just get it close. Just give me a minute. All right. That should have got rid of most of them.
One more on the corner.
Let me just make this smaller. So
yeah, perfect.
All right.
I think you can see why everyone fell in love with it.
It is so adorable. I mean, like, who wouldn't? Oh my God, congratulations.
Yeah,
I mean, thank you so much for pulling that clip and sharing it with us to see like how the process was.
yeah, I got nostalgic for a bit. It was like
I
16. But yeah, I think if you see the visuals there, like even the shadow, the way it breaks up on the ground and stuff is very, very 2D, very painterly, and that's what we were going for.
Yeah.
And I think
And Munjal, just to interject, because in the original pitch, the designs were very different, but it had this wonderful illustration quality. Heather had described that final image in the pitch document, but from the beginning, even though they were different designs, it just had this this classic feel to it and a richness that comes with sort of book illustration, and that from the first day we knew we didn't want to lose that, and the fact that Munjal was able to translate that into CG and into this particular style that again wasn't like anything that was out there was just such a huge success, and I couldn't be more proud of what he did.
Yeah, thanks, Christopher. So Vani, one of the things is like the elephant. I think one of the inspirations for the elephant was, I don't know if you've probably seen the Jaipur Elephant Festival or the Kerala Elephant Festivals,
I
right?
mean, I recognize it right away.
I think it's just to see that visual, right? I mean, no one's seen an elephant like that, right? And that kind of was an inspiration for us that, that's the India that I want people to see, that riot of colors, the richness of the art, and obviously music. I mean, there's so much more also to the music of India than just Bollywood. And I think, I must say, Daniel Ingram did an amazing job with the music. I think he just got it. I remember compiling a list of Bollywood songs for him to listen to, and I said that this is what, just some inspiration for you. And then I think he just right from the start, he got it. I think, and I think Mattel did, Christopher did an amazing job putting in the right kind of talent. I think that was, we were just very fortunate that everybody who came on board on this project brought an amazing amount of right kind of energy, and they just took the projects notches higher. It just went higher and higher at every stage. I mean, again, even the voice. I mean, Pawan Bharaj, who's the voice for Deepa. I mean, I think the first audition that Heather, Lisa, and me heard, and we said, we just like, yes, this is it. This is our Deepa. And
thank you, Munjal. So Heather, going back, thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful. So Heather, can you talk a little bit about the challenges of production, and how from having a great partner with and knowing Christopher and having Christopher's support, were there any other challenges that you'd like to share on the journey? Like, how did you all stay together for this long and keep that dream alive? Because I've heard a lot of stuff that how hard it was to even push things, like Christopher was saying. It was difficult. So how would you, as a producer, kind of maintain the uniformity and the emotional level of everybody to reach where you eventually got to?
You start pitching a project and it's just really hard to get somebody to say yes. I mean, getting somebody to say yes is just so hard, to the point where when Christopher said yes, you're like, really? Like, are you sure? Like, we're ready, like, I think we were very dumbfounded, weren't we? Lisa, very like, oh, because no one ever says yes. It's very, very hard to say yes. So I always start with a big list of possibilities, so that, as you get the no's on a project, you still can see the possibilities. And, maybe you have a few maybes, and you can kind of help take those maybes and then use those maybes to get somebody else to say, well, maybe. And then you can go back to that other maybe and said, well, if you're in, maybe this maybe is it, and so I think always to be able to say to the team, but we're not dead yet. There's still a possibility here. Somebody liked it there, and we can, because for a while we had interest from Sprout, the network Sprout. But then they went out of commission, you know, and so you thought, oh no, now what, you know, and then so there's setbacks, but you know, you're not out until everybody says no. And it was just like we always had somebody that was still interested, that still was like, oh, well, I don't know, you know, that we could kind of loop it together. And I know, you know, it's years and it takes a long time, but I think what a lot of people don't realize too is just how long the mechanics of making something takes. And I don't know, Christopher, maybe you want to talk about this more, but you know, you get the yes and you're like, yay. And then you go into legal, and legal takes forever, right? And we started with HIT, which was part of Mattel. And then that you can absolutely talk more about that, Christopher, but then, you know, they merged and then we had to wait for all of that to kind of shake out. So even though it's years, it wasn't like, oh, we were working on it day in and day out. Sometimes you're just waiting for kind of, you know, a lawyer to call another lawyer to say yes. Like that could take 3 weeks, you know. So sometimes it's just silly things like that you're kind of waiting for. So.
And I have to really applaud Heather, because through it all, she was the conduit and communicator, and she would, you know, follow up with me for updates, communicate them to Munjal and Lisa. And meanwhile, you know, I'm doing all the rallying on our side, but as she said, there was more sort of hurry up and wait than anything for a while. And once we got into development, there was sort of a big rush through development, and you know, everybody working around the clock. Then when we got the sale, it was waiting between the sale to Netflix and the green light to actually move into production was another sort of nail-biting waiting period. But one of the things that I wanted to point out about this particular project was that for me, it was one of the most collaborative and global productions that I've had the pleasure of being involved with, in that, you know, very often, especially with a larger company, it's one-stop shopping. You know, you sell the property, they produce it in-house, they put it on their air, and, you know, you're kind of done. And this was, you know, a trio of creators spread around the globe, working with a studio that was, well, we had a character designer in the UK. We had Munjal and another advisor out of India. We had a studio based out of Vancouver, but with facilities in India that actually produced it. We had one animation producer in LA. We had a writing producer and a story editor in another part of the US. I mean, there were so many different, you know, our composer was in Canada. Our voice talent, Pavan, who plays Deepa, unbelievable. First time actor, you know, at 8 years old or whatever she was at the time. I mean, just crazy. But all of these people working towards the same goal, and everybody sort of with this shared vision. I do have to share one thing though, totally unrelated, but I said shared vision. I remember the debate I had with Lisa about making the decision to have Anoop not speak. And I remember, and Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, but initially it was like, but why wouldn't he speak? Why wouldn't he, you know, why wouldn't, and finally I think, and my memory may be cloudy, but I think the convincing argument was that's the whole reason for him to change color. He communicates, you know, and it just strengthens this idea that his color changing sort of represents his communication as opposed to him articulating it. But that was a big change, and that was, and you know, at least I apologize, it may not have been you who was arguing it the hardest. Somebody was arguing against him not speaking.
He always never not spoke. I mean, Anoop.
Who was, well, and maybe actually was one of the writing team,
He too.
Noel or Atul. Sorry, I just remember that was the one creative debate.
That's awesome. Like, hey, that's awesome that you remember someone fighting for something else and how the development process happens. Going to Lisa, segueing from, one of the most beautiful things for me was Anoop changing colors. how did you come with that idea, and where did that idea really come from, where Anoop shares his experiences through colors?
Well, I always wanted them to have this special relationship where they could communicate. They didn't need words. You know, they had their special line of communication, and he would not speak Anoop, but he would toot and communicate. And I think Munjal in the beginning did such a great job, like using his ears like arms, and that really brought Anoop alive in such a different way. And then I thought it would be an extra special way for him to communicate what's going on with him if he was like a big mood ring, if he changed colors to his emotions, because that would also help the audience who might not at first have that, like, that unspoken communication, with him, to help know what's going on with him.
Got it. No, that's
And
amazing.
I think that's really the interesting part about development too, is that you have these debates like, well, why doesn't he speak? He should speak. And then at the end of it, you're like, no, he shouldn't speak, because that is going to make the more important the fact that he does change colors. And it's going to mean that we need to use his ears and his trunk more to communicate. And that's why it's animated, another reason to show how he acts and interacts through animation, because he's acting. Elephants are great, right? They're not just a face. They have these big ears, they have the trunk. So I always think that, like, in the development process, there's debates, there's starts, there's stops, but you always have to have that, because at the end of the day, if they're good conversations with the right people, it ultimately ends up backing up where you end up, and it's a good thing to debate things along the way. So, and we were so lucky to have Christopher and Phil Malloy that Christopher mentioned before in London that we worked with. And then once we got into production, we were working with Teal Sperling at Mattel, who was like just the best, keeping us in the loop. If we had questions as scripts were coming in, she really listened to us and then went back to the team, and then we heard from the team. So it was really collaborative, and really that kind of back and forth, it went throughout the production, which I think ultimately just always made it better and better and better. So
excellent. I think you're absolutely right. Creativity is a part of evolving. Development is a part of evolution, and having conversations and meaningful conversations, and falling in love with what the creation is and questioning it is the hardest part of the growth of any project. So congratulations. Is it possible to watch like a teaser or like, I know there was like a little glimpse that we were, you were sharing with me earlier. Would it possible to kind of take a little break, and not break, but like, see some material of?
Oh, I have a teaser here, which I'm happy to share.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
By the way, just a little bit of trivia. There's a terrific character in the show who is a gorgeous, wry, sort of droll character. He's a tiger, and he is named after Munjal. So he is Munjal the tiger.
Yeah, that's.
I saw that. I was like, great, that's awesome.
That's my standard moment in the show, and I do have a lot of them. So thank you so much, Christopher and Mattel team, for that. All right, here we go. Is my screen visible to you guys?
Yes, it is.
All right.
Right this way, enjoy your stay here at Mango Manor with Deepa and Anoop. With Deepa and Anoop, we all say a perfect days when we are all
Wow, congratulations. Congratulations. I watched a couple of the episodes. I love it. I absolutely love it. Is there anything else that you'd like to share, like give an advice to some of the creators in India, anyone that's watching this? Right now, we have a lot of audiences, with their questions, which we will take later, but any advice from your part that you would like to share?
Can I say one thing to everyone? Because I think this goes back to the genesis of Deepa and Anoop. One of the things that I look for as both a producer and as a buyer or investor in content is a unique point of view, a story that's just dying to be told. One of the pitfalls, I think, for a lot of new or younger or inexperienced creators is to imitate what's already out there. And the thing that was so wonderful about Deepa and Anoop was that it didn't have a drop of imitation in it. It was such an original story that both Lisa and Munjal were dying to tell. And you could feel that. And so I really, really, truly encourage anyone who's developing their own ideas or collaborating to put aside this idea that there's a way to do it and that they're going to look to the successful shows out there and try and emulate them, because nobody's ever made it big by imitation. And I just can't stress enough how what brought Deepa and Anoop to where it is today is the passion that these three had to tell a story that just hadn't been told. So I would encourage people to do that.
If I can just add, Vani, to what Chris was saying, I think this is an exciting time to be a creator, and particularly an Indian creator. I feel that, now with the world looking towards India, and Bollywood is obviously a lot bigger than what it was when we started on this journey. I was mentioning to someone that I think the story of Dimple started even before Priyanka Chopra was discovered by Hollywood. So we were the original Bollywood break for the world, and we did it with animation. So I think, I think that's the great part about Indian stories, Indian culture. And through this show, I think we've had an opportunity to give people a taste of it, whether it's the food, whether it's, the culture, like the Nanaji plays of Veena. Again, simple things like even when we are discussing music, we consciously kind of stayed away from stereotyping India, because when you talk about Indian music, in Hollywood, it's only sitar and tabla. And a lot of the times, when I was giving notes on music, I said, let's not just do sitar and tabla. And this is what I really loved about Daniel's work, that he went out and truly explored, and that's why you see, I think what's really great about even the sound of Deepa and Anoop is extremely well-rounded. You can instinctively connect to it. A lot of Indians I know will connect, but I think the global audience will find very interesting facets. Even like throughout the show, we've done different festivals. We've done, there's obviously a wedding special out there. There's the Rakhi festival that's out there, So we've done a whole bunch of different festivals as well. Food, I think we've done a whole bunch of food. So I think this show allowed us to pepper these things in. And again, I think what was great was that I think we managed to, at least we believe that we managed to keep it at the right level, that without it being so Indian that people lose out, but just leaving it at a level where people will be inquisitive to find out more about India, and Indian culture. Hopefully we'll see how that shapes up.
Yeah, and at the same time, if you are South Asian, we hope that you watch it and you think, oh, that's my grandma. Oh, that's my family. So I think walking that line through the production was really something that was always really kept in mind, and the team was formed to make sure. And I'm sure, Christopher, if you wanted to talk about that a little bit more, but walking that line between, it's global, everybody can watch this and see this new like festivals and colors and songs, and that's super neat, but also it being really spot on, so you could also recognize yourself if you're South Asian.
That was something that was critical to us in doing this, was that while, you know, at least one of the creators was of Indian descent and living in India, many of the people involved in the production weren't. And so we wanted to be incredibly authentic and sensitive to, you know, specific issues of culture and ethnicity, and the depiction of those, both visually and in storytelling. And so we worked with a ton of different advisors and consultants. And you know, we were grateful to have many people of Indian descent involved in the production and the creation and development of the show. But where we didn't have, I mean, Daniel's a great example of an incredibly gifted composer who is not of Southeast Asian or Indian descent, and yet we had, you know, a consultant on music, a consultant on song lyrics, a consultant on, you know, just truly wanting to respect and celebrate those things that were specifically Indian, and those things that were perhaps more Pan-Asian, and those things that were global. One of the great things about the tweaks we made to the overall story of Dimple and Anoop was to set it in a Western city, but be very clear that this was a multi-generational family of Indian descent, with grandparents who, you know, recently came from India, parents who perhaps were born outside of India, but still had experience in India. And then Deepa and Anoop, not Anoop, Deepa and her siblings who were born in the West, but lived in this multi-generational family. So there was all sorts of room for, as Heather said, people to see themselves, and whether you were Indian or not, to see perhaps you're, you know, you come from a family or a community that is existing in another part of the world. And so you have those ties to the homeland and your new culture. And again, as I said at the very beginning, it became a great sort of setting for having human and non-human characters from all around the world to sort of pass through Mango Manor.
Awesome. Celebrating India. That's so full of joy. Thanks. Lisa.
So I don't know, for advice for first-time creators coming from me, never give up. Just never, never, ever give up. And what it can also be helpful to you, just like this was for us, try to partner up with a producer. We were so lucky that Heather came on board because she knew the industry, she knew how to navigate it. Heather has this amazing sensibility about projects and gives great notes. She really hones in on all the stuff like that you might need to fix or tweak or this or that. And she knows just how to maneuver everything in ways like, oh my God, like I never knew. So we were so, so lucky, honestly. And then when Christopher said yes, we were like, oh my God, like over the moon. It was just crazy. And and honestly, everybody who came on board just made this so much better, raised it to different levels. I mean, it's just been so amazing to just be a part of this. My face hurts from smiling so much. But really, that's you know, never give up. And tell your story, you know. Yeah.
Thank you. This means a lot, you know, coming from people who have been in the industry, are, you know, professionals, and have called upon the universe in some very beautiful way to connect with each other and create something very beautiful and meaningful at the same time. But the amount of time it takes, and I think that's you know, that's beautifully shared with the talk today. So I cannot thank you for being here and sharing your valuable feedback and information. I'm gonna start taking a few question and answers, and Sanjay is going to start taking a few question and answers, and Shiva as well. So once again, thank you so much on behalf of Asifa India and the wonderful team that supports us. So thank you. Have a wonderful Q&A session now.
Thank
Are
you.
we ready?
Doing this, look forward to the questions.
Okay, great. All right, there we go. Okay, Shiv.
By someone. So, Lisa, can you
Sorry,
address
sir. Can
this?
you please repeat the question?
Sure. What is the question? I'm sorry, I can't. I'm doing this on my iPhone, and it's not allowing me to turn on to get my
Yeah.
photo on.
Yeah, the
Can you please
question,
try now?
yeah, the question is, any tips if I want to pitch a series, pitch in a series idea?
Wait, say that again. If
Like Lisa, like any tips if somebody who is a professional want to pitch a series idea to some producer?
okay, so tips for pitching a series. You want to make sure you are very clear about the who and what your show is about, what the world is of your series, who those characters are in that world. You need to develop a pitch Bible, and the more concise you can be, the better. It takes a lot of work to make it concise and compelling. I would say that, and if you can go to there are certain professionals, there are certain places where you can learn more about developing pitch Bibles. There are some great books out on it. So, and you want good art in your pitch Bible. And then you need to network, and you need to get out there and just start talking to people. Those are my tips.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Another question for you, Lisa, because you wish to leave early for another webinar. So how did each one of you start your careers? So can you share your views on that?
So I started writing, let's see, I always wanted to be a writer and a comedy writer, and everything just seemed that I would, stories that I would create just all came to me naturally animated. So I thought, well, if this is what comes naturally, why fight it? And go really learn how to do it. And so I wound up getting accepted where Heather used to work at Hanna-Barbera, where it was like their last animation writing class that they gave. And so I got accepted into that, and that got me out to LA. And then I learned how to create a series. I learned how to write a pitch Bible and write a script. So so that started me, and then I learned how to pitch for show ideas, and got my first break on writing a few episodes on cartoons. And then I kept actually by accident, it just kind of worked out that I wound up heading up Women in Animation in New York City. So I kind of used that forum as my way to learn more about development of series. So I would bring in speakers to talk about how do you create animated series for preschoolers, or for and 6 to 11s. And so that's how I just started to learn, and read books.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Networking.
Right. Christopher, can you share how did you start your career?
Sure. I actually started out in theater, and I had studied theater in school and was working for the literary department of a local theater in Los Angeles when I took a temp job answering phones at Warner Brothers, which led to a full-time job with benefits answering phones. And as I got familiar with and exposed to the world of animation, I saw a lot of similarities between animation and theater, and just loved the idea of doing something that had some permanence, you know, that you didn't just put on a performance and you were done. This could last. And the fact that at that time the animation was specifically for children was also something that was really of interest to me, because I had a big interest in education and in just the impact of media on kids. And so my job was as a receptionist, and I got in on the ground floor, and after about 20 years, I left as senior vice president. So it was a slow burn, but it was starting at the bottom and working my way up, doing what I loved, which was focusing on telling stories.
Okay, thank you. My question is with Heather. How many drafts are written before an episode goes into the production?
Oh boy, 1,928. There's no real number. But it's a lot of drafts go in. And I think that's one thing a lot of first timers, you know, if they get a bunch of notes, they think, oh, my idea is terrible. This script's terrible, you know, and they stop. But that's just, notes are a way of life. And actually, if you're getting notes, it's kind of a good sign, because it means people are engaged and they're interested and they're working with you and they want it to be better. So most of the time we say, you know, when you hire someone to write a script, you always say, well, there's, you know, 2 drafts and a polish, but it's never really 2 drafts and a polish. Christopher, you can probably also have an opinion on this. It's usually like 1 draft, then 1 major rewrite, then kind of another little rewrite, and then about 5 or 6 polishes, while people go back and forth and be like, oh, I don't know about this line and that line and that line. And then the great thing about animation is you then do an animatic, and then everything can change again in sometimes, not always, and you hope not, but big changes can happen then when you do the animatic. And also, you know, lines of dialogue can change in the animatic. And I personally really think that the show is made in animatic. By the time you get that animatic is really when you know what your episode's going to be. And there's bunches of changes that go through that, you know, that the iterations of your animatic before then it goes to animation. And once you're in animation, there shouldn't be any more changes, or else the budget people get really unhappy really fast.
If I can just add to what Heather's saying, because one of the things that I think is frequently sort of underestimated or underlooked from a writing perspective is that animation is very much a visual medium. And so while the script is the beginning of the process, it's certainly not the end of the process. And so as the script evolves into visual storytelling in the storyboard and then the animatic and the animation, all different sorts of feedback and contributions are given and made by everyone who is touching that script as they go. And so while it's constantly changing and evolving, it's not a reflection of the script being good or bad. It's really bringing it to life in animation in a visual way, which again, the script is only the first step in that process. But as Heather was saying, getting feedback, getting notes, you know, it's sort of like the question is how long is a piece of string? You know, it depends. There's so many different factors. number one being how many people, how many cooks are in the kitchen, how many people are contributing to that process. So it's one thing to sit in your bedroom at night and write a script and you're the only perspective. And then as you bring in partners and collaborators and producers and networks, and it just that sphere keeps expanding. And if you give someone a script to read, they will have a response. So as Heather said, there's not one number in terms of how many drafts a script goes through. But I will say the fact that it goes through so many drafts is really reflective of how collaborative the whole process is.
Thank you, Christopher, and thanks, Heather, for the reply. Next question is to Munjal. Do you have any art to share about Deepa and Anoop? How the initial concept looked like?
Yeah, what I have is a Bible that I can definitely share and take people through. I think it'd be interesting to see how it all started. So let me just share my screen. Is this visible? Can everyone see this?
Wow, yeah, thank you. This is
This
very,
is a
very amazing.
rich Bible that we put together. So this was the original beautiful art that was created for the show, and that's the original Deepa Anoop sketch.
And I think the great thing about this Bible, just to jump in for a second, is how much personality and humor you get from these characters just from looking at them on a piece of paper. I mean, that previous picture you were showing, Munjal, could be a moment lifted from an episode. So
Right.
I think that's such a strong point with this, is that you fall in love with the characters before you even see them move.
Yeah, absolutely. These visuals, you can see Anoop and different expressions that you have. So it just gives you into the personality. And that's the family of the characters: mom, dad, the grandpa, Pintu, brother. Again, this is one of my favorite visuals. You can just see that they're really having fun, both of them. They don't really need anybody else to have fun. Obviously, you had some initial story ideas. And yeah, that's the reception of the Mango Manor. And that's Nanji, cooking up dishes and in the kitchen. I think this art was just, really, really beautiful. And that's what we tried to capture originally when we did the first teaser, I think, which you all just saw. And I was just looking at some of the very early sketches, which actually I just found today as I was flipping through. Yeah, and this is again some expressions of Anoop. It's all part of the pre-production. And that's expressions for Deepa. And let's see what else. So that's some of the art, and I was also looking at some of the early sketches that we had.
Wow, wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Munjal. This is amazing. How did your career started?
Oh, okay. Well, I think, I was always interested in animation, and I think right from my school days, I was a huge Star Wars buff, and initially, obviously, very interested in visual effects and animation. Growing up, I was a huge comics buff. I had a massive collection of comics. I think probably first 1,000 comics. And that was my world. My people used to joke about me that if you keep reading so many comics, you'll become a cartoon yourself. So I was the family cartoon, and I had absolutely no problems being that. I said, hey, this is a wonderful world to get lost in. And back when I started, there really wasn't any place to learn animation, and Ram Mohan was the only institution. So, and I heard one of the talks that Mr. Ram Mohan gave at Xavier's Institute of Communications in Mumbai. And when I heard him, I said, this is it. He's the man. I just have to, hold on to him and just leech on to him, literally, and he was like an ocean of knowledge. Whatever I have learned today is thanks to him, because, for a huge part of my career, it was him. All these years, I was extremely fortunate that he took me under his wings. So whatever I know is thanks to him. And having a teacher like that was absolutely amazing. And back then, Graffiti was, as a company or studio, one of the first computer graphics studios in the country. So I had Ram Mohan sir, and I had Ashish Khosla, who was my other mentor, with whom I worked on the technology side, because I came from a technology background. So by education, I'm a computer science graduate, and learned graphics programming. But always I think I was always more interested in 2D animation, and I think it had a life. And I think even when we started doing a lot of the early animation, I think we would always be more interested upon how can we make 3D animation look more 2D, more hand-drawn, more illustrated. And I think in a way, even when we started on Deepa and Anoop, I think the visuals that you saw, that kind of the challenge was to see how can we capture that in, using 3D. So I think, like I said, that for so many of us in India, I think at least my generation of animation professionals, I think Ram Mohan was the one-man institution that we all learned under, and I think we're very fortunate to have a master like him, graciously teaching us.
Wow. Thank you so much. Ram Mohan has been a true legend of Indian animation. You are also on AVGC forum of FICCI as well as MESC, like core group. So, how do you see animation industry growing 10 years from now?
I think I would say that we've seen already an exponential growth in the last, I would say, 5-6 years. I think domestically, the amount of shows have grown quite phenomenally. I think almost 70 to 80% of the content on channels like Cartoon Network, Disney, Nickelodeon, is now being locally produced, locally sourced. That's already happening. There are Indian shows or shows created by Indian creators that are now going global. Bheem is one. We now have Deepa and Anoop, and hopefully, this should open up the floodgates for a lot of Indian content or content inspired from India, to go global. So I definitely see a lot of potential for a lot of Indian creators to go out and tell stories. And we are hoping that with Deepa and Anoop, it might pave the way for others to follow, and maybe, hopefully, if it inspires others, I think we've done something right.
Yeah, so, thank you.
Thank you. Numbers, I think over the next, I would say about 7 years, we almost looking at a 10x growth. We have about 20 million professionals in the AV sector.
Okay. Thank you so much. My next question is to Lisa. If anyone has a show for kids TV, what are the 5-6 important steps to follow?
If anybody is interested in creating a show for kids TV, what are the steps to follow?
Yeah.
again, I would say to start networking, to create a very strong pitch Bible, and to start talking to people. If you can get a producer on board with you, like we were able to do with Heather, or a production company, so that when you go pitch to broadcasters, you're partnered with someone that they know can do a show, you know, that they know how to get this done. And I think that's, yeah, the best advice I could give. Make sure you have a good pitch Bible, network, really start to get to know the industry, read all the trades, see who's doing what, figure out what, you know, look at what's on and where, and see if you could see where would my show find a home. You know, where could my show live on these different broadcasters?
And can I add to what Lisa's saying? Because one of the things that I think people don't do enough of is looking at what's out there and what works and what doesn't work for them. So the best school is literally by looking at other animation and deciding for yourself what's really effective, what's not effective, what gets done over and over and has become a bit tired and cliche, what's new and exciting. Because as you think about creating a show, remember, it's going to occupy a space next to these other shows. So learning from what's out there is like literally a free education. And there's an enormous resource just by turning on your television or, you know, your computer and observing and seeing what is working creatively and commercially, and applying that to your own work.
Thank you so much, Christopher. Thank you, Lisa. Siva, you have any further question? You want to take up some questions?
Sure, sir. I will just take a couple of questions. Thank you so much. And I would like to again thank each and every one of our honorable speakers for today for a lovely presentation, and congratulations on the show. This is a very good one. So we have the next question would be, I would like to hear more about the networking side of things. How does one go about approaching networking for becoming more successful in the IP? Where do we find the people, and how to create a connection and things like that? Can you please throw some light on that?
Let me first jump in and say, by participating in events like this, I think that's the start. The start is, as Lisa said over and over, networking, networking, networking. The cliche is true. It's all about who you know. And so the more you can reach out to others working in the field you want to work in, or people whose work you admire or respect, the better. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to, you know, fly to Europe and go to the international animation marketplace tomorrow. It means take advantage of the different events and organizations and gatherings and screenings, you know, that you have access to. And then, you know, one thing leads to another. But the more you can reach out and take advantage of the internet, things like LinkedIn, you know, or Facebook, where you can connect with others who are doing what you want to do. I think that's absolutely the first step. And by the way, many people try to rush to go to markets to sell their shows. And that's not always the best route. You know, spending a little time getting to know the industry, the people in the industry, building a network of support for not just your project, but yourself is absolutely critical.
And I think too, people have to see you a few times. I think, you know, going to the international market, sometimes we see companies or people and they show up once and then they go away, or they show up twice and they go away. And then you think, are they really in the industry or are they not? So I think just, when there's events, you keep showing up, you keep showing up, you keep showing up. Like these productions are kind of year-long processes. And so you really only partner with people that you really know and you really trust, and that you really you've have a relationship with. So I think when you go to these networking events, it's not immediately I have to pitch my project to you. We need to do a deal. It's just having a drink with somebody. It's just going to a panel and asking a good question. It's just people seeing your face and you just showing up. And then suddenly someone will kind of say to you, hey, let's grab a coffee. Like, what do you do? You know what I mean? And not saying that you can't just be passive and sit there, but there's a lot for just continuing to show up, having those kind of just very probably mellow conversations. So it doesn't have to be this big, oh my gosh, I have to show up, I have to have my pitch, I have to know exactly what to say. It's literally just going to a panel and saying to one of the panelists, I really liked blank that you did in your career, that you can find out through LinkedIn, through IMDb. It's just those kind of conversations I think go a long way to build.
If I can add, I think my own experience of having produced a show way back in 2004 with Nickelodeon, and at that one I ended up working with senior executives from Nick International as well, and I realized that maybe it might be good to just go and meet them, saying, hey, I'm a producer from India. We've just done a show with your channel in India, and and I started meeting people at MIPCOM, and at that point, I was not even really pitching. I think at least the initial, 3 markets, I was just there to listen, to soak in, right? And yes, there were a lot of people that I looked up to and said, like Joanna Farone, Joe is one of them. I said, she's a creative fighter. It's been one of the most iconic characters. And I said, I absolutely have to meet her, and literally I just dropped her an email and said, hey, Joe, I would want to meet you, and I wasn't even sure that she would meet me, but we met at MIPCOM, in fact, at MIPCOM Junior, and I think we spent like an hour and a half. And it was one of those very first meetings that, that I still remember vividly, that I never expected, and MIP meetings are like notoriously famous for being 15 minutes, right? Yeah. And if you're super, super lucky, then maybe 25 minutes, right? But for you to get an hour and a half, it's like hitting a jackpot, and then someone like, Joe, who's a legend in the business, right? And I think it's about finding that connect. And like Heather said, that we got introduced through Joe because I'd worked with Joe, and so when someone's reaching out, and saying, hey, do you know Munjal? And if there are 5 people from the industry said, yes, I know him, right? That helps because people want to work with people who they know, right? And also people they're comfortable with, and that's one thing that I've learned, that it's very important for people to like you and be comfortable around you, because some of these projects, they will be long. I think Lisa and my journey has been like over a decade and a half, right? And we've seen some really, really tough days, getting greenlit, not getting greenlit, shows greenlit, but the executive has been fired, all sorts of things, I think, on Deepa. I think we can write a book on this, But I think it's just that we stuck it out, and then and then for someone like Heather to come on board and say, yes, I will be the champion for you. And I think probably it's also somewhere because she knew me, and obviously she knew Lisa, and she felt comfortable that yes, I feel I know the people, and it's a nice show. Yes, this is something that I can represent, and I can help.
And one other thing that I think is really important is a sense of confidence, because anyone starting out in any business, but particularly in this business, when you're pitching a creative idea or you're wanting to sell a creative idea, there's a lot of nervousness that goes with this, and feeling that, especially if it's your first time, am I good enough? Is it going to be what they want? Will they like me? All of those kinds of insecurities start rattling around in your head. And I would really encourage people to remember every single person in this business, in this industry, wants you to have the next big thing, wants you to have a great idea that they can work you on. Everyone, without even thinking about it, is rooting for you, whether you know it or not, because if you come to them with a story that's great, they're going to want to be involved, or they're going to want to buy it, or they're going to want to partner with you. And there's nothing better than hearing a great pitch or a great idea or a great, so every meeting you have, every person you meet is hopeful that there's an opportunity to connect with you, to work with you, to buy from you, whatever it may be. Now, most of the time, we all get disappointed because it's not quite what I'm looking for. I don't really like it. It's not. But the reality is, when you walk in the room, when you reach out via email, as Munjal did, when you try to connect with someone on LinkedIn, or you attend something like this, everyone is hoping that you've got the next thing up their sleeve. So they're rooting for you. And when you know that and you feel that, it just boosts confidence, and with confidence comes comfort. And when you're comfortable, whoever you're meeting or connecting with is comfortable. So I think the more you can leave behind the feelings that, I've never done this before. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even know how to do this. I'm new to this. Look, Heather, well, all of us have been in this for over 30 years, and we still have those feelings, but we fight them every day to think, we've got to come at it with, hey, I've got the next best thing, and I'm going to bring you along with me.
And I think too, presenting yourself as I am a creative person. This is what I do. This is my whole self. Yes, today I'm pitching you this show that you might like or not, but I also design, I also write. So I don't think, hanging your hat on that one show isn't a good idea. I think you have to present yourself always as being just a creative person. And I think the industry seems really big and scary, but when you get into it and when you really keep meeting people, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And it really isn't that big once you begin to think like, okay, how many shows are out there? Who are they getting produced by? What are the networks? Like, you can really kind of begin to sort it out if you keep reading and putting it together. And the networking side, it's funny because of course I knew of Ram Mohan. I had been working with Joanna on another project, and then she was like, you have to meet Munjal. And then I knew of Lisa from WIA. So it was like, oh, she's working on this. So, things come together. And suddenly what was like 4 disparate things, it's like, oh, okay, they're all working on this. Oh, great. But it is a small industry. And people, will ask or cross-check, oh, have you ever worked with these people? Oh, are they good? Oh, great. So I think as you go through the industry, it's just really important to just think about it holistically in the way of, I'm meeting people, I'm learning what they do, I'm telling them what I do or what I want to do, and just kind of always leaving behind you a good impression.
Wow, that was like lovely. I mean, thank you so much, Christopher, Munjal, and Trina. Very informative. Each and every one of you really have given very, very valuable advice to each and every one of us. So the next question would be, what would be the importance of a mentor, or having a mentor to succeed in this? And what's your advice on how to find the right mentor or a guru? Because it's really hard these days. Everybody is busy with their priorities.
Yeah, I think I can address that. I think the reason where I am today, because I had great mentors. To start with Ram Mohan, obviously, friend, philosopher, guide, father figure, all rolled into one. and to have someone like him, teaching me the ropes, invaluable. As I kind of started attending international markets, someone like Joe, I think huge legend in the business, and for her to show me stuff that she was working on, and like Heather mentioned, Fido, and said, hey, do you want to work on this? And I said, sure, absolutely, because working on Fido, and I mean, at that point, Fido Dido was a huge iconic character, and basically we created a series of shorts, and taking Fido from a 2D to 3D, and when I was writing the shorts with her, I learned so much, I think it was just like literally the opportunity of working with her, I throw ideas at her, she would come back saying, yeah, this works, this doesn't work. I think working with people with that kind of rich experience, helps immensely. And then that once we became comfortable, then we worked on something else. I think similarly, I think that experience helps. I think with Heather, when we were working with her, even with some of the initial development stuff, like when we were doing initial animation tests, you would send it to her for her feedback, and she would have great notes. It's like, okay, I didn't think of that. I think it's also that these guys, because they've seen so much, they've seen more of the world, particularly, and then they come back to and give you feedback. You take that and you improve. I think having great mentors is important, but also listening to them is equally important. And I think a lot of the times people don't take feedback well. We see a rejection, but like Heather's mentioned this, that what is it they're telling you? One thing is getting a rejection, but many times, I think I've done this in the question. It's like, can you at least please tell me why it doesn't work for you? Because that will help me understand, the dynamics, right? So, and I think sometimes having mentors, they will tell you what to do, but also equally important, what not to do. And I think it's just finding the right mentor. And you're right. I think it's unfortunate that we don't have, gracious people like Ram Mohan, who are just willing to just spend time with you. And I think not just with us. I mean, he's done that for hundreds of kids. I know there's a reason why he's called the father of Indian animation. So I think it's.
And building on that, Munjal, I think there's certainly formal routes for partnering with a mentor, and there's a lot of organizations that offer mentoring programs where you can be paired up with a specific person who has actively expressed an interest in mentoring someone in the business. But one thing, and this is not to get too psychological here, but one thing that I've really found in the world of animation versus live action is that so many of the people involved in the development, production, or sale or programming of animation are really mostly concerned with the work itself. It's less about the ego, it's less about their personality, it's less about, and so they're more open to collaboration, sharing knowledge, giving guidance, being supportive, because there's just a lot less ego involved. Now, I'm not putting down the world of live action, but it's just a whole different thing where in live action, it's very much about the individuals and the personalities. With animation, we're all behind the scenes. So we're all sort of, rolling up our sleeves and doing it together. And therefore what emerges is this feeling of mutual support. And I can't tell you how many times I have built relationships with people who have pitched me an idea or interviewed for a job or a writing job or a designing job. And for whatever reason, it didn't work out, but we stayed in touch. And they've said, and this is what the advice I would give to anyone who's interested in finding a mentor. They've said, would you mind if I kept you posted on what I'm doing? Or would you mind if I reached out to you occasionally with questions? And I'm flattered and say, sure, of course. And we've ended up building, decades long relationships, by doing that. So if someone who is listening is interested in a mentoring relationship, I would really encourage you to look at organizations like Asifa, like Women in Animation, like, many of whom have formal programs in place that you can really benefit from. And also, just as Heather and Munjal and Lisa were saying, as you attend these seminars and markets and panels and festivals, reach out to people you believe you can benefit from, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to be receptive to, to sharing their experience or their knowledge or their point of view or perspective with you. Don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, my career started actually with an internship. I was going to USC Film School, and there was a posting to do an internship in the feature animation development department at Turner Feature Animation. And so it was a lot of script reading and doing notes and coverage on those scripts. And I would get to go in for 1 day a week and shadow the executive there, and, would just sit in on pitch meetings and other department meetings and things like that. And that, boy, if you can intern, that is the best thing, because based on that, I interviewed at Turner, which owned Cartoon Network at the time, which was just beginning. Cartoon Network was very tiny then, but I was able to then go from that feature animation division and jump over to Hanna-Barbera, which was producing all the first shows for Cartoon Network. And then that's where I started and just started working my way up. And so I just think internships are great, because it gets you inside a company, it gets you meeting people, and there's always going to be, if you show up on time, you do what you're told, you're smart, you can learn a lot. And when it comes to, oh my gosh, we need an assistant, we need, somebody to answer phones here, there, or somebody needs somebody to be a runner, you're that first person up in their mind, and they know you're going to show up. So they're going to take the gamble on you versus somebody that they don't know. So my company, actually, we've just hired an assistant who was an intern. So internships are just a great way to start.
Thank you, Heather. That was like
Just add, one of the things that we've started at Frames, at Wiki Frames, is we started a program called Frame Your Idea, which is basically we get 15-minute pitching sessions with some of the top people in the industry. And what we do is we request top broadcasters, producers to come and spend time and give 15 minutes of face time to young budding writers and creators. And we've had some great people. We had Aram Jacobian from Netflix, who come and spend. He gave an entire day, just listening to pitches and giving advice to people. And we've had some success stories as well. At least 3 people, their stories didn't get picked up, but they got jobs as writers. One of them got hired by, I think, Sony. Someone got hired with Amir Khan Productions. So I think sometimes just being there, someone just may not like your idea, but just might like you or like your energy and your enthusiasm, and you might get picked up, and that's your foot in the door. So yeah, I think being there is, and showing up is very, very important.
Great, thank you, Munjal. So may I request Lisa if you would like to add your perspective on this?
No, I agree with everything, with what everybody has said. There are wonderful associations who are having very structured mentor programs like Women in Animation. And also one of the benefits of COVID is that a lot of organizations and groups are having great programming, over the internet. I mean, it used to be all like, meetings you had to physically attend, but now there's so much more programming going on that could give you access to all kinds of people, and knowing who those people are, and they may be the people in positions who you have to get to. Researching people on LinkedIn, sending them a little message. Like Christopher said, start to reach out to people and say, hey, do you mind, do like what's called a meet and greet or an info meeting with someone. Say, hey, do you mind, can we have a cup of coffee? Can I ask you some questions? and start to talk to, the big secret is everybody loves to talk about themselves. So, start asking people questions about how they got started. Ask them what kind of advice they would give to new people coming into the business, and then I wouldn't do the big ask right then, like, hey, would you be my mentor? But like what Christopher discussed before, say, to them, hey, would you mind if I had another question about something? Can I call and ask you? Start your relationship slow. I mean, just like you do any friendship or whatever, you need to build them. And, and like what Heather was saying before too, selling a show is hard, but when you go into that pitch meeting, when you go in with your pitch Bible, I tell my students this all the time. It's like, it's hard to sell a show, but you're also there to sell yourself. Exactly what Heather said. A pitch Bible could be a great portfolio piece for you. You're going in there, you're showing people that you could communicate ideas, in a great way. Maybe you're a fabulous artist and maybe your show won't be picked, but they might be in there going, at an internal meeting, say, we have this show idea we want to develop, and we really like the way that person who just came in, their artwork, let's get them in to do the character designs for this, or let's get so-and-so in, who we just met to write that Bible or whatever. So, sometimes you may not sell that show, but you may wind up getting so much work because they like you. It's the connections with people. And, and it just starts with a hello, a big smile, it's like, make that connection, and then it grows from there. Sometimes it's just so simple, but so hard all at the same time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you, Heather.
You're
Thank you, Munjal, and thank you, Christopher. It was a really, really lovely session, and you have given us a lot of delightful visual treat and a lot of insights. And thank you so much for all your valuable answers. It means a lot for us. With this, we would like to end the session. So on behalf of Asifa India and the volunteers and coordinators and all the audience, once again, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. We were honored.
Thank you.
So
Thank
much
you,
fun.
Vani. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Munjal. Thank you, Christopher. Thanks all of the evangelists and participants and volunteers for making this show wonderful. So kind of you to give so much of time for this particular show, and we look forward to have amazing Deepa and Anoop show for a longer duration. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tell